For those of you that are with us, hello and welcome. Again, this is Strengthening Your Business Resilience with Lisa Buckner. My name is Justin Prevost Schultz. I serve as the Director of Operations at Chicago Food Policy Action Council. And I want to welcome you all to the 2024 Fall Mixer, Scaling for Success, Supplier Development Tools for Farms and Food Businesses, hosted by the Good Food Purchasing Initiative team of Chicago Food Policy Action Council. The Good Food Purchasing Initiative team and all our partners are working to make the Chicagoland food system more equitable and transparent with local, sustainable, fair, humane, and nutritious food. Our work includes shifting institutional procurement through the Good Food Purchasing Program and also uplifting our suppliers with resources and events such as this. So thank you for joining us, and I will turn it over to Lisa.
Thanks, Justin. Let me share my screen here. Okay. Is everyone seeing that presentation?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. My name is Lisa Buckner. I'm the education coordinator at National Farmers Union. I'm going to talk a little bit more about National Farmers Union and future opportunities and resources that we have at the end of this presentation. I know that's a little bit backwards from what folks usually do, but we're just going to hop right in. I'm here today to talk to you about strengthening your business resilience. So I work with a lot of new and beginning farmers, people who are teaching themselves, often from scratch, how to farm. So they're focused on things like best practices for planting and harvesting, maintaining soil health, managing livestock. It's a huge learning curve for those who are new to agriculture. But we find that once people have a handle on the substance of their work, they start considering questions like, did I set up my business properly? Am I violating employment laws and I didn't know it? Oh my gosh, it's tax season. What do I need to do? So these are the business topics that I help new and beginning farmers navigate. And I want to also stress that these are topics that even seasoned professional farmers still need help with. A lot of the folks that I work with have been farming all of their lives. They grew up on farms, but all of a sudden they find themselves taking over family businesses or wanting to start their own business. And it's no longer enough just to know how to harvest a crop anymore. There are all of these other business considerations, right, that they need to keep in mind if they want to keep their farm business resilient. So I'm going to go over a few different topics today for you as a farm business owner to consider. And in each topic, I'm going to point you to some resources that you can access right after this from your computer, completely accessible to everyone. So take notes or take photos of the resource slides as I share them. A few disclaimers. This is by no means an exhaustive list of things you might need to consider as a farm business owner. And do not consider any of this legal advice. I am not a lawyer. None of this is legal advice. And also keep in mind that I am not a subject matter expert in any of these topics. My job as the education coordinator at National Farmers Union is to connect farmers with the subject matter experts in these topics. I'm like a go-between, and I do this in a number of different ways, which I'll touch on at the end of this presentation. But I'm saying all of this because if you have questions that arise as I'm going through these topics, I'll be honest, I probably won't be able to answer them. Please do not ask me specific tax questions. I don't know the answer, but I can certainly point you in the right direction. I'm just not the person to ask to dive deeper into these topics. So that being said, let's go over some business considerations and get you thinking about whether you need to put some more thought into any of these areas, or at least point you to some resources. So starting from the very beginning, business formation, you have a property that you can farm on, you came up with a name for your business, you have an idea about how you're going to make money, but have you given serious thought into how your business is going to be structured legally? Or maybe you already have a business, everything is set up, you've been making money, you're profitable, but maybe you still have questions about whether you set it up correctly. The good news is that no one has ever gone out of business because they chose the wrong business structure in the beginning. This isn't like a do or die situation, but there are considerations that you should keep in mind when choosing a structure for your business. Think of The structure of your business as your legal plan for ownership, for capitalization and profit and asset protection. So I've included 4 business structures here, and these are typically what we see in agriculture, but of course, these are not all the types of business structures. Starting with sole proprietorships on the top left there. Think of these as you and your business are one. You are your business is you. You are the sole owner. All of your income and expenses are reported on a personal tax return. Sole proprietorships are very easy to set up. There's not much work you have to do there, but there are no protections for you or your personal assets. If someone gets hurt on your farm, your personal assets are on the line. You are not protected. So sole proprietorships are great business structures for someone selling goods at a maker's market, for example, but not ideal, right, for a high-risk business like agriculture. You're operating machinery, you're dealing with food safety, etc. It's very high risk, and you want to make sure that your personal assets are protected. So LLCs on the top right there do provide that protection. These are separate legal entities that protect your personal assets. You might still be the only owner and operator of your farm, but now everything is sort of packaged into your LLC and you are personally protected. Partnerships on the bottom right there, these are made up of 2 or more business partners. These can be formal and legal business partnerships, or partnerships can be quote unquote assumed, such as 2 siblings both profiting off of a farm that they operate together, for example. Partnerships are considered pass-through entities, so profits from the farm pass through the business, and then the partners pay taxes on those profits on their individual tax returns. Again, depending on the partnership structure, individuals may be exposed to greater personal liability. And then last but not least, we have cooperatives in the bottom left there. You may be familiar with the cooperative model in other aspects of your life. Maybe you shop at a co-op, for example. These are member-owned and controlled businesses. Members contribute equity based on a 1 member, 1 vote principle. The co-op shares profits with members based on member use. So for example, if you shop at REI, which is a co-op, you know that the more you spend at REI, if you're a member, the more you get back at the end of the year. Those are the profits that REI is sharing back with you because you've spent more, you've used the co-op more. There are a number of ways to set up a farming co-op, and I have a resource for you if you're interested in this model, which is a little more unique than other models and more so sort of community focused than other business models, I would say. But all of this to say, this is really just to make sure that you've given thought as to whether the way that you've set up your business or the way that you plan to set up your business gives you the adequate protection that you need and or is the right model for you and what you're trying to achieve with your business. And here are some resources. Sorry, some of these are a little blurrier than others. Again, these are accessible online by anyone. So take a photo of this slide if that's helpful, or take notes. So if you want to learn more about business formation, I recommend you look for this PDF on the left there. Farmer's Guide to Business Structures. This is published by SARE, the Sustainable Agricultural Research and Education. If you're interested in cooperative farming, there's a PDF in the middle there called Cooperative Farming, which does a great job diving into every aspect of forming a farming cooperative and what you need to consider. And then the last PDF on the right there, Coordinating Farm Labor Across Farms, lays out in a really great way the sort of practical differences in what a cooperative farm versus an LLC would look like. So comparing those 2 different business structures. So take a picture of this slide if you need to. Again, these should be easily findable on with a Google search. Let's talk about labor now. This is a big one that always seems to be a little bit misunderstood in some specific aspects. And I will just ask the question outright, are you sure you're not violating any employment laws? The main topics that typically come up under this topic are workers' compensation, child labor, and volunteering. So starting with workers' comp, have you given enough thought into workers' compensation? Do you know your state's requirements for having it if you own a farm? Are you and your employees protected if an accident happens, if you have employees? Regarding child labor in the middle there, child labor laws across all 50 states differ from one another. They stipulate ages and hours a child can work. And those stipulations differ between school days and non-school days, so there's a lot of intricacy there. Are you familiar with those laws if you're hiring minors? And you might be thinking, well, certainly sometimes minors work on my farm, but I don't consider them employees. I'm not paying them. They're just volunteers. They come from the local school and help me pick tomatoes, or they're my, nieces and nephews who I bribe with ice cream cones at the end of the day. So this last topic of volunteering is one that always gets some raised eyebrows after I say this. But did you know that as a for-profit business, you are generally not allowed to accept volunteers to work on your farm? And that does not matter. It doesn't matter whether those volunteers are a local school group who want to have a day on a farm experiencing what that's like, or if they're your family members, it doesn't matter. So consider those topics of employment law. Are you feeling comfortable with them, wishy-washy in a few of them? I know the volunteering one always raises a few eyebrows, especially regarding family members. Here are some resources that I would point you to if you're feeling a little unsure. Now these are all web pages, so I don't have any nicely packaged PDF images to share with you here. But these are some great places to start. The National Agricultural Law Center has resources on all things ag law. There are two web pages that I would recommend that you visit. One is entitled Workers' Compensation for Agricultural Workers, and one is called Child Labor Laws. So you can Google those or just play around on the National Ag Law Center's website. You'll find a ton of good information on all things agricultural law. And if you're wondering about volunteers and interns on your farm, I would recommend visiting urbanaglaw.org, specifically /employment laws. This details all of that information really well. It's a really great overview of having volunteers and interns on your farm and what that looks like legally. And of course, there's the Department of Labor. They have a webpage called State Child Labor Laws Applicable to Agricultural Employment. It has a really handy interactive map. Everyone loves maps. You can click on your state. You can see the different child labor laws across all states and how those would apply to your business. So take a picture of this slide if you need to. Google these organizations, these web pages, and hopefully these point you to some good information. And I know I'm just dumping a lot of information on you. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and Justin and I will help go through those at the end of this presentation. Accounting, this is a big one. Every business, whether you're an ag or another business model, needs to master accounting. And this is for good reason. One of the scarier aspects of business ownership, especially if math wasn't your favorite subject in school. So consider some of these basic aspects of accounting. Do you feel like you have a strong grasp on what all of these are? And are you able to utilize them to build your business? Starting with balance sheets, do you know how to create an accurate balance sheet? And more importantly, a balance sheet that works for you, that you can refer to and draw from, because balance sheets are, at the end of the day, ultimately a tool for you to understand your business. They're tools for you. So is your balance sheet working for you? Do you feel comfortable using it, or do you need to get some more resources in that area? Income statements, what are they? What's the difference between a cash statement and an accrual statement? How do you calculate for depreciation on them? Cash flow, what are the components of cash flow? How do you plan for your cash flow needs? How do you record your cash flow? And bookkeeping in general, do you have a good bookkeeping system? Are you accurately recording all of your receipts somewhere? Is your system working for you, or do you need to improve it? I know a lot of farmers, the extent of their bookkeeping system is a box of receipts in the corner of their office. And that's still good because at least you're keeping your receipts. But have you thought about maybe moving to QuickBooks or another bookkeeping system and more accurately accounting for those things? So if you're not feeling very comfortable with accounting, the good news is that there are a ton of free resources accessible online. Many of these are self-paced courses. So please take a photo of this slide. If you Google these course names and organizations later, you should be able to find each of these fairly easily. So these are just a few that I would point someone to if they had questions about accounting. The Fearless Farm Finances course is delivered by Marbleseed. It's a series of 15 videos on YouTube, so it's very accessible. The Center for Farm Financial Management also has a free online course. And by the way, none of these require you to make an account or log in to any platform. These are all completely accessible by anyone on the internet. So the Center for Farm Financial Management's course is called Developing Financial Statements and Measures. It's a little more interactive than the Marbleseed one and has a ton of video lessons. Northwest Farm Credit Services also has a balance sheet basics course, which walks you through all you need to know about balance sheets specifically. So it goes in depth there. And then just to bring this all home, wrap it all together, AgWest Farm Credit has a really digestible, just a short PDF called Preparing Agricultural Financial Statements. And obviously there are a ton more ag accounting resources out there online. I don't want to overwhelm you. I could have made this list a lot longer, but these are just a few options and the ones that I would immediately turn someone to if they had questions about accounting. And accounting leads us perfectly into the next farm business topic, taxes, which is everyone's favorite topic. And you probably already know the questions that you have regarding taxes. Things like, are you even considered a farmer for tax purposes? How does the tax code define a farm? Do you have to file a Schedule F? And if so, how do you do that? How do you account for depreciation on your taxes? And everyone loves a deduction. What can you deduct as a farmer? So luckily there are a lot of great resources on taxes out there for farmers. Let's have a look at some of those. The Rural Tax Education is a program of Utah State University. It has a lot of helpful resources. They have a small farm tax guide, a farm income tax estimator tool, and also a helpful article called Farming, and Who's a Farmer for Tax Purposes, if you're wondering if you are even considered a farmer at this stage in your business. The Center for Agricultural Law and Taxation at Iowa State University also has a really helpful website. They actually have an interactive Schedule F on their website, which will walk you through everything on a Schedule F and how to fill it out. It's one of my favorite tools. I turn people to it all the time. They also have a depreciation and expensing series on their website, which has a lot of articles that walk you through examples of depreciation, how it affects your farm taxes, etc. And I also want to point out that notice that both of these are programs of university extensions. Extensions are great resources when it comes to farm taxes and really anything farm business. Consult your university extension if you ever have questions. The University of Illinois, I know, has some great extension folks who will happily point you in the right direction. And obviously there are plenty more resources out there, but these are some of my favorites and I would say are really helpful starting points if you have tax questions. Credit is another thing you might need to consider. Getting into farming is expensive, and we know there are huge barriers to access for those who aren't inheriting land, or if you're not inheriting a business. It is hard. It's hard for new and beginning farmers. And unfortunately, usually this means you need to consider credit. Questions that people usually have here are regarding how to find a lender, how to build that lender-borrower relationship. Your lender is someone that you need to feel comfortable with, that you believe understands your business and your goals. And you might also be wondering how lending decisions are made and how you can set yourself up for success when you meet with a lender. And then, of course, everyone's favorite part of this is loan repayment, right? How can you calculate your payments? How do you make sure they work for your business. So if you have questions about credit, I would recommend looking into your local farm credit system. In Illinois, there are a few. There's Farm Credit Illinois. There's also Compere Financial. They will definitely have resources for you, and I encourage you to reach out and meet with a lender to get your questions answered. But they also might have resources online for you to look through. So for example, Northwest Farm Credit Services is one that I consult frequently. They have a lot of resources online. They have a few business tools PDFs that they've put together that I've mentioned here. So they have one on how lending decisions are made that walks you through what you need to consider as a borrower in order to put together a successful application. They also have a financing agriculture, the business borrower lender relationship that details what to look for when selecting a lender and what you should do once you do start that relationship with a lender. And I think that I saw that Farm Credit Illinois has a loan repayment calculator on their website. I know you can find this calculator on Farm Credit Services of America as well. So all of this to say, Farm Credit has some amazing resources, and I'm happy to connect you with someone who will be able to tell you more in this area. I'm going to have my contact information at the end of this presentation, so happy to continue this conversation with anyone that would like to. And finally, succession planning. And notice that I wrote from both angles here, because succession planning goes both ways. You have to plan for the future of your farm and your business. On the flip side of that, you might also be on the recipient end of someone else's succession plan. If you are taking over your family's farm, if your family operates a farm together, or if you're a new and beginning farmer, taking over or leasing land from someone who is exiting farming. So succession planning goes both ways. There are steps to succession planning. Some are straightforward, like make sure you have a will. That's pretty straightforward. Others are a little more not straightforward, like how do you develop best practices for communicating really hard issues within your family if you operate a farm with your family. So I've laid out a few aspects that go into succession planning. Mostly what I want to stress here is that succession planning is for everyone. It's for everyone, no matter where you are in your business journey, no matter if you're just starting or if you're planning on exiting farming soon. So starting with communication. Communication is key. We all know that. This is especially important if you're farming with your family. Start exploring those hard conversations. How is the business and or the land going to be divided once the current owner or owners transition out of the business? This is probably a touchy subject if a family is farming together and has a lot of kids. On the flip side of that, it could be difficult if you don't have any kids or you don't have any specified heirs. What's going to happen to your business? What's going to happen to your land? So start exploring those conversations early. That's important. And that moves into the topic of land. And again, this goes both ways. If you are an exiting farmer, who are you giving your land to, especially if you don't have any specified heirs? If you're a new and beginning farmer, how can you access land if you aren't inheriting it? And those are two sides of the same coin, and that coin is called succession planning. So I have resources on the next slide for you if this topic really hits home, and I'm going to dive a little more specifically into land access in a few slides. There's also financial considerations, obviously, estate taxes, cash flows, insurance, making sure the farm works for the next generation or whoever is going to inherit it, making sure it's going to work financially for their situation. And of course, there's legal considerations, and I'm not a lawyer again, so I didn't dive into the details there, but I feel like I can recommend you that you have a will, right? Everyone should have a will. That's a great first step in sorting those legal issues out. So here are some succession planning resources. If you identified with that second point about land, either being someone who wants to exit farming but doesn't have any heirs to leave farmland to, or if you're a new and beginning farmer and are struggling in accessing land, look into land link programs. Most states have a land link program which will connect farmers and landowners. In Illinois specifically, the program is called Illinois Farm Link. On Illinois Farm Link's website, you can make a profile either as a landowner or a new farmer, and then you can look through other people's profiles to start that search yourself. If you Google farm succession planning, a lot will come up. There is no lack of resources in this area. You can find a lot of workbooks. Workbooks are very popular in the succession planning world. I'm not sure why. They're very actionable, so I enjoy a workbook, and I think they're important tools to use when you're thinking about this process. So you'll find a lot of workbooks from various organizations. I've included some here. One of them is for an organization called Land for Good. They just have a farm succession planning workbook, but you'd be able to find a few different workbooks if workbooks are your thing. Again, look into extensions. Illinois Extension has a farm succession page with a few different resources. I really like University of Wisconsin-Madison's extensions resources. They also have a workbook called Cultivating Your Farm's Future. So extensions, again, are really great resources there.
Lisa, can I, we
yeah.
had a quick question in the chat that I
Yep.
just wanted to bring to your attention.
Yeah.
Carmen asks, what if the farm is in a trust?
Okay, I don't know if you were here at the beginning of this presentation, Carmen, but I specified that I'm not a subject matter expert in any of these topics. I connect farmers to the subject matter experts. So I would love to connect with you off of this presentation and see who I can connect you with in my circles to better answer that question, but I just don't want to give you any, I don't want to lead you astray because I'm not technically an expert in succession planning or any of those legal and financial considerations. But thanks for asking. Any other questions about succession planning while we're here? This is a really hot topic. Just a few weeks ago, Illinois Farmers Union did a succession planning event in Champaign. We plan to do some more this summer. So if succession planning is on your mind, I will definitely share those events with you. Diving a little more into land access. If you're looking for land to farm on, this is also, right, this is a succession planning topic. This is like a subtopic of succession planning. Again, I recommend checking out Illinois Farm Link, as I mentioned in the last slide, but the Farmland Information Center is a program of American Farmland Trust. It's a great place to start. If you go to farmlandinfo.org/find-farmland, there are a ton of resources that will walk you through every single step of finding farmland, accessing land. So you'll start by completing some goal setting and self-assessment worksheets or workbooks. Again, everyone loves workbooks in the succession planning world. And then you'll watch some videos, complete more worksheets on assessing your financial readiness, which, by the way, this all helps you draft those cash flow budgets and gives you, I think they have sample cash flow budgets and sample financial statements on their website too. So going back to that accounting section that we touched on earlier, this is a great resource for that as well. And they'll also teach you about leases, how to determine what you need in a lease, how to negotiate a lease, or if you're looking to own land, if you're looking to purchase land, it will walk you through how farm sales work, your ownership rights, things that you need to consider as a buyer, etc. So I cannot recommend this enough. Please, please, please utilize the Farmland Information Center. They are an incredible resource. They also just have a really simple PDF that I've put in this slide. It's called Acquiring Land to Farm. It's just a good starting point if you're not quite ready to dive into all those video lessons and workbooks. It's just a really quick PDF that you can read through. So all of these are great resources and great places to start. But if you're looking for some more hands-on learning and some deeper dives into any of these areas, I have a program for you to consider. don't worry, this is not a sales pitch. This program is free, so I'm not selling you anything. It's completely free. Like I said, it's my job to connect farmers to these opportunities. So National Farmers Union has a program called the Beginning Farmer Institute. I manage this program. It is a completely free 10-week online program every fall. So it's actually happening right now. Following the 10 weeks, there is an in-person session with farm tours and some additional learning sessions. So that's what you're looking at in these photos. These are photos from last year where we held the in-person session in Iowa. So this is just the group at a hog farm. Here is an educational session diving into insurance and insurance considerations for farms. We visited down here on the bottom left a farm in Des Moines that exclusively leases to refugee farmers. So really cool specialty crops that you wouldn't necessarily see anywhere else in the US. So the in-person portion of the Beginning Farmer Institute is always really fun. So like I said, it's a 10-week online program. These 10 weeks dive into a different farm business topic, much like I did in this presentation. So for example, 1 week might be accounting, 1 week would be taxes, 1 week would be, I think we might start a food safety session. So different farm business topics to consider each week. At the beginning of the 10 weeks, you'll fill out a self-assessment on your business resilience. So you'll assess yourself on where you think you are in these different topics. With the results from that self-assessment, you'll set some personal business goals that you'll work through the course. So every week you'll watch pre-recorded lessons, and then each week we'll follow up those lessons with a live session with the instructors. So that classroom time is your time to ask questions about how the lessons apply to your specific operation or situation. You have the chance to network with the rest of your cohort, people who are in similar situations with you. It's one of my favorite aspects of this program because we have a very diverse group of farmers who come through this program. We have, you know, small urban farmers from Chicago and Detroit. We have ranchers operating on thousands of acres in Montana. We have commodity crop growers, so corn, soybean. So really diverse, and everyone in between. So I've noticed that the people who go through this program get as much out of it from each other as they do from the instructors. They really learn from each other. It's a great way to meet farmers that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise meet. And then with the successful completion of the program, we have an incentives package that includes the in-person trip that I mentioned before, which has farm tours and some additional education sessions. And the incentives program also includes some one-on-one meetings with the instructors. And I am going to stop there. Happy to answer more questions about Beginning Farmer Institute. I will tell you a little bit about Farmers Union in general, because I didn't do that at the beginning of this presentation. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Farmers Union, we are a grassroots member-based organization. We have over 230,000 members across the country. We offer educational programs like the Beginning Farmer Institute, which is open to both members and non-members. We also have an annual women's conference that dives into some farm business topics, as well as leadership and communication and advocacy skills. That's actually happening next week, so I'm traveling to Texas for that this year. We also have, what else do we have? An advocacy training that happens every spring. That's actually the second picture that you see there. These are participants in our annual advocacy training. So they go through a day of workshopping, learning best practices for advocating concerns in their community. And then we set up meetings with representatives on Capitol Hill for them. So the second day they go to the Hill, they meet with their representatives and practice those skills that they learned in the workshopping the day before. And then the flagship events that make up Farmers Union, in my mind, are our annual convention. Members debate and vote on our policy. So again, going back to that grassroots structure, every policy that we advocate for on the national level comes directly from everyone in these photos. It comes directly from our members. And then we have a fly-in where members come to DC, meet their representatives, advocate, much like the advocacy training that we host. National Farmers Union is made up of state divisions. So we do have an Illinois Farmers Union. I mentioned earlier that Illinois Farmers Union hosted a succession planning event. So if this sounds like an organization that you're interested in being a part of or learning more about or staying in touch with because of the events that we host, we welcome you to attend the annual meeting. It's happening on January 28th. You'll hear from guest speakers. You'll set Illinois state priorities that will then be taken to the national convention in March. And I want to stress that it's so important to have diversity of thought at these meetings. Our membership is made up of conventional and large scale commodity farmers, as well as very small urban farmers and everyone in between. So it's great that we have such a diversity in our members, diversity of thought, and we foster those discussions between these different avenues of agriculture. So all that to say, if you've been looking for a way to be more involved, we'd love to keep in touch. And for those of you who may be located in Indiana, there is also an Indiana Farmers Union. And that annual meeting is taking place on January 29th in Columbus, Indiana, I believe. So if you're located in Indiana and have questions about that, please reach out to me. I will have my contact information on this slide, the bottom right there. You can subscribe to the Illinois Farmers Union newsletter here. If you scan that QR code, you'll be notified when the Beginning Farmer Institute applications open, which will be around April 1st, I believe. So mark your calendars if you want to participate in that. We'll share other events happening, more succession planning events likely coming this summer. It seems like it's a very in-demand topic. And we'll give you more information about Illinois' annual meeting. And then for those of you who may be watching from Indiana, there's also an Indiana specific newsletter. So if you want to be added to that, feel free to shoot me an email. And with that, I am going to stop there. Happy to answer any questions. Again, keeping in mind that I'm not a subject matter expert in any of the things that I talked about. So don't ask me specific tax questions. I'm not going to know the answer, but happy to talk about more educational opportunities within Farmers Union, the Beginning Farmer Institute, and any other questions that you have. Stop
Thank
sharing.
you, Lisa, and thank you all for attending. As we do move to Q&A, as I prompted earlier on, I'm going to drop our survey link in there, as well as a little message around our, we are making all these sessions for the last 2 days available on our YouTube channel here in a couple weeks. So posting a couple chat messages in there for those links. And then for our Q&A, if you want to just drop your question into the chat box, I'll make sure that Lisa and I see it, and we'll get that surfaced. To start us off, though, Lisa, while the rest of you are typing in your questions, Viviana asked, when do applications open for the program for 2025, when you were talking about the Farmers Union program?
Yep. The Beginning Farmer Institute is going to open on April 1st, I believe. Yeah, it should open on April 1st. So if you want to be reminded of that, feel free to subscribe to the newsletter or send me an email. I'll just put my email in the chat here if anyone has questions about that and want to talk more about that. Yeah, April 1st, and we typically make decisions in July, I believe. That's when we get back to folks. And then the program starts in September or October, September, October.
Any other questions? What parts of the country are most members?
Yeah, so we have membership we have 33 organized state divisions. So for example, Illinois Farmers Union is an organized division. I would say the majority of our members are in the Midwest. Some of our large states are Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, what we call the Rocky Mountain region, which is Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico. That's not the Midwest anymore, but sort of like central US, Wisconsin. Yeah, but we have members across the country. If a state doesn't have an organized like state farmers union, folks join at the national level.
Any other questions?
I'll just drop a link to our website there if anyone's interested in learning more.
Cool.
And again, feel free to send me an email if you have any follow-up questions. Happy to chat over email.
Here's an interesting question, Lisa. Are those members grouped on productions?
Oh, absolutely not. Obviously in some states, like you're not going to get many small urban growers in North Dakota. So most of our members in North Dakota are those larger commodity growers. States like Wisconsin and Minnesota are pretty fascinating because you do have larger, well, maybe not so much Wisconsin, but Minnesota, you'd have some larger commodity crops, but a lot of smaller, new and beginning farmers are popping up in urban areas. So yeah, it depends on the state, but absolutely not grouped by production at all. And that's something that makes these national gatherings really interesting. At our national convention, you'll have a small dairy producer sitting next to a rancher who farms on thousands of acres. And everyone is there to discuss the same policies. So it's a really fascinating process to watch and be part of.
Do you know is if anybody if National Farmers Union or the Illinois chapter what events they're at? Like I know I feel like I've seen you all at the Everything Local conference, which is in Springfield in January. I don't know if that was the National Farmers Union or if that was the chapter.
Yeah, that would have been Illinois. We bounce around. National Farmers Union was just at FFA convention in Indiana. I think that was last week. Yeah, we bounce around to different events. I am representing National Farmers Union at the Tilth Alliance conference, which is happening in Washington State. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any other questions you want to drop in the chat box? Ooh, yeah, what services are available after the program?
Okay. So yeah, upon successful completion, which we define that as, active participation in all of the sessions, you will have the opportunity to meet one-on-one with the course instructors to dive a little bit more deeper into this specificities of your operation. Everyone gets a complimentary Farmers Union membership following the completion of the program, so that opens up some more opportunities. For example, we have our annual women's conference that you can attend. Any of our state or not, well, Illinois annual meeting, our national convention. It just, I would say it opens up more opportunities and events rather than services. I wouldn't really consider us much of a service provider, more so events.
Anything else from you all? We've got the time to ask Lisa the questions here. Otherwise, I'll drop her email back in the chat box.
No age restrictions. That's another great thing about the Beginning Farmer Institute and our organization in general. I think in this current class of the Beginning Farmer Institute, our youngest producer is 22 or 23, and our oldest is 56. So they're all new and beginning farmers, but they're coming in at different stages in life, and I think that just adds a really fun diversity to the group and even more learning opportunities that folks can get from one another.